The journey of a human life is not a single stagnant pool of water, but a river that winds through vastly different landscapes, changing its speed, its depth, and its power as it moves toward the sea. When we stand at the beginning of this journey, we often believe that life is a straight line, a ladder to be climbed where each rung is clearly marked. But the reality is that life is composed of distinct sacred phases, each with its own set of rules, its own unique trials, and its own specific glory. To understand the phases of life is to understand the very chemistry of growth. We must begin by acknowledging that the first phase, the phase of the awakening, is the most volatile and yet the most vital. This is the springtime of the soul, a period where we are defined by our curiosity rather than our convictions. In this early stage, we are sponges, soaking up the light and the shadows of the world around us. We are told who we are by our parents, our teachers, and our culture. But the true motivational spark of this phase happens when we first begin to disagree. It is in that moment of internal friction, when the person you are being told to be clashes with the person you feel yourself becoming, that your true life actually begins. This is the birth of the individual. It is a time of immense vulnerability because you are building your foundation on ground that is still shifting. You must realize that in this initial phase, your primary job is not to be successful, but to be observant. Many young souls feel a crushing weight to achieve greatness before they have even understood the nature of their own hearts. They see the finished products of those in later phases and feel a sense of inadequacy, forgetting that the oak tree was once a seed that had to struggle against the weight of the dirt just to see the sun. If you are in this phase of discovery, you must give yourself the grace to be messy. You must understand that your failures are not indictments of your character. They are the data points of your evolution. Every time you try a path and realize it is not for you, you have not wasted time. You have narrowed the search for your true north. This is the phase where you develop the muscle of resilience. You learn how to fall and, more importantly, how to stand back up with a bit more wisdom in your eyes. It is a period of radical experimentation. You are testing the limits of your courage, the boundaries of your empathy, and the depth of your intellect. The motivation you need here is the permission to be a work in progress. You are a masterpiece that is still being sketched, and it is far too early to judge the final composition. As the sun rises higher on this journey, we transition into the phase of the builder. This is perhaps the most demanding era of human existence. The wide-eyed wonder of youth begins to crystallize into a focused, relentless ambition. You are no longer just exploring the world, you are trying to leave your mark upon it. This is the phase of the heavy lift. It is the time of careers, of building homes, of raising families, and of establishing a reputation. The stakes feel higher because they are. In this phase, the romanticism of following your passion meets the cold reality of sustaining your purpose. It is here that many people lose their way, not because they lack talent, but because they lack endurance. The middle phases of life are a marathon of the spirit. The initial excitement has worn off, and the finish line is not yet in sight. This is where you find out what you are truly made of. It is easy to be motivated when the sun is shining and the path is new. It is much harder to be motivated on a rainy Tuesday when the bills are due. The work is repetitive and you feel as though you are running in place. But it is precisely in this grind that the most profound transformation occurs. Think of the blacksmith's forge. The metal is not shaped when it is cold and comfortable. It is shaped when it is under heat and under the hammer. The pressures of this phase, the responsibility to provide, the demand for excellence, the necessity of sacrifice, are the very tools that are refining your soul. You are learning the difference between ego and confidence. Ego wants the trophy without the training. Confidence is the quiet knowledge that you have survived the training and are ready for the test. In this building phase, your motivation must become internal. You can no longer rely on the praise of others to keep you going. You must develop a why that is so deeply rooted in your identity that the external world cannot shake it. You are building the infrastructure of your life, and infrastructure is often invisible. It is the long hours, the silent sacrifices, and the commitment to integrity when no one is watching. Do not resent the weight you are carrying. The weight is what is giving you the strength to stand tall in the storms that are yet to come. As we navigate through these years of construction, we often face the crisis of the middle, a moment where we look at the life we have built and ask, is this it? This is not a sign of failure. It is a sign of growth. It is the soul signaling that it is ready for the next level of depth. We begin to realize that the external markers of success, the titles, the possessions, the accolades, are secondary to the quality of our relationships and the peace of our minds. This transition is the bridge between doing and being. We start to prune the unnecessary. We realize that we don't need to be everything to everyone. We just need to be everything to the few things that truly matter. This is a phase of radical prioritization. It is where you stop trying to win the world and start trying to win back your own time and your own spirit. You begin to understand that the phases of life are not about accumulating more, but about becoming more. You are shedding the layers of who you thought you had to be to reveal the core of who you actually are. This process of shedding can be painful, as it often requires letting go of old dreams that no longer fit, but it is the only way to make room for the wisdom that is waiting to take root. You must see that every phase has its own shadow and its own light. The shadow of the early years is arrogance. The light is curiosity. The shadow of the middle years is burnout. The light is competence. By recognizing which phase you are in, you can stop fighting the season and start harvesting its specific benefits. If you are in a season of struggle, know that you are in the strengthening phase. If you are in a season of waiting, know that you are in the rooting phase. Nothing in nature blooms all year long, and you shouldn't expect yourself to either. The phases of life are a sequence of preparation. You are being prepared right now for a version of yourself that you haven't even met yet. The challenges you are facing are not obstacles to your path. They are the path. Embrace the transitions. Welcome the change. Trust that the river knows exactly where it is going, even when you cannot see around the next bend. Moving deeper into the heart of this journey, we enter the second great territory of human existence, which we might call the phase of the crucible. If the first 1,000 miles were about finding your feet and building your strength, these next 1,000 are about the refinement of your spirit through the fire of reality. This is the period where the theoretical becomes the practical. We often enter this phase with a certain level of armor we built in our youth. The armor of our ego, our certainties, and our rigid expectations of how the world should reward us. But the middle phases of life have a way of stripping that armor away, piece by piece, not to leave us defenseless, but to make us more flexible, more resilient, and more authentically human. This is the era where you face the gap between the life you imagined and the life you are actually living. For many, this gap is a source of profound sorrow, but for the motivated soul, this gap is the space where character is born. It is the phase of the long obedience, where the initial adrenaline of starting something new has evaporated and you are left with the day-to-day discipline of maintenance. Whether you are maintaining a career, a marriage, a health journey, or a creative calling, this is the season where you learn that true power is not found in the grand gesture, but in the repeated action. In this crucible, you will inevitably encounter the desert of the soul. This is a sub-phase that everyone must pass through, a time when your previous sources of motivation no longer seem to work. The goals that used to drive you suddenly feel hollow, and the methods you used to find success no longer yield the same results. It feels like a plateau, or worse, a decline. But I am here to tell you that the desert is not a place of death. It is a place of transition. It is where you lose your thirst for shallow water so that you can learn to dig for the deep wells. When the external world stops applauding you, you are forced to ask yourself, who am I when no one is looking? What do I stand for when there is no immediate reward? This phase demands a shift from extrinsic motivation, the desire for money, fame, or status, to intrinsic motivation, the desire for mastery, autonomy, and purpose. You begin to realize that the most important work you will ever do is the work you do on yourself. The projects you build in the world are merely reflections of the internal architecture you have constructed. If your internal world is chaotic, your external success will eventually crumble. Therefore, this phase of life is about stabilizing the core. It is also during this time that we encounter the reality of loss and the beauty of scars. No one reaches the middle phases of life without being broken in some way. We lose people we love, we lose versions of ourselves we cherished, and we lose the illusion of our own invincibility. But there is a Japanese philosophy called kintsugi, where broken pottery is repaired with gold, making the mended piece more valuable and beautiful than the original. This is the motivation for your middle years, to be a person of gold-sealed cracks. Your failures and your heartbreaks are not things to be hidden or ashamed of. They are the proof that you have been in the arena. They are your credentials. A person who has never failed has never truly lived, for they have never tested the limits of their own capacity. In this phase, you learn to lead with your scars rather than your trophies. You become a person who can sit with others in their pain because you have navigated your own. This is the birth of true empathy, and it is the most potent form of influence a human being can possess. You move from being a competitor to being a collaborator, understanding that your light does not grow dim if you use it to light another's candle. As you push through the weight of this phase, you must guard against the gravity of cynicism. There is a temptation, as we see more of the world's flaws and our own limitations, to become hardened. We see the shortcuts others take. We see the unfairness of the systems we live in, and we feel the urge to stop trying so hard. But cynicism is the coward's way of protecting themselves from disappointment. The truly brave person in this phase is the one who remains radically hopeful despite the evidence. It is the person who knows exactly how hard the world can be and chooses to be kind anyway. It is the person who knows how much work it takes to build something and chooses to start again anyway. This is the phase where you develop stamina of the heart. You learn to pace yourself. You stop sprinting toward an imaginary finish line and start walking with intention. You realize that the phases of life are not a race to be won, but a song to be sung. If you spend the whole song waiting for the final note, you miss the melody that is playing right now. This is also the phase of the great reevaluation. You begin to look at the relationships in your life with a more discerning eye. You realize that you have a limited amount of emotional energy, and you start to invest it more wisely. You stop trying to please the masses and focus on being present for the few. You learn the power of the word no. By saying no to the distractions, the drama, and the superficial obligations, you are saying a profound yes to your own destiny. This is a form of self-respect that only comes with the passage of time. It is the motivation of the guardian protecting your peace, protecting your values, and protecting the fire that you have worked so hard to keep lit. You become less concerned with how your life looks on the outside and more concerned with how it feels on the inside. You start to appreciate the quiet mornings, the honest conversations, and the simple satisfaction of a job well done. You are no longer trying to prove yourself to a world that isn't really watching. You are proving yourself to the person you see in the mirror. As this phase reaches its peak, you find a new kind of freedom. It is the freedom of the seasoned traveler. You know what to pack and what to leave behind. You know which storms will pass and which ones require you to seek shelter. You have a sense of perspective that allows you to remain calm when others are panicking. This competence is your new superpower. It is not the loud, boisterous energy of youth, but a quiet, steady force that moves mountains inch by inch. You are now ready to transition into the final, most mysterious, and most rewarding phase of all. You have survived the discovery, you have endured the crucible, and now you are standing on the threshold of the harvest. You are carrying a wealth of experience that is meant to be shared, not hoarded. The weight you have been carrying for so many years is starting to feel lighter, not because the burden has changed, but because you have become so much stronger. You are realizing that every struggle you faced was a necessary ingredient in the person you are today. We now enter the final great expanse of our journey, the phase of the harvest and the era of the luminary. This is where the 3,000-mile journey culminates in a panoramic view that can only be earned through the passage of time and the weathering of many storms. In the earlier phases, we were so busy planting, tilling, and protecting our fields that we rarely had the chance to look up and see the landscape as a whole. But in this final third of our lives, the urgency of becoming gives way to the majesty of being. This is the phase where you finally stop fighting the current of life and begin to master the art of floating. It is not a time of stagnation or withdrawal, as society often mistakenly suggests, but a time of intense spiritual and emotional synthesis. You are gathering the disparate threads of your existence, the youthful mistakes, the middle-aged struggles, the hard-won victories, and weaving them into a tapestry of meaning that provides warmth not only for yourself, but for everyone you encounter. The motivation in this final phase is fundamentally different from anything that came before. In youth, we are motivated by the more experiences, more possessions, more recognition. In the middle years, we are motivated by the better results. Better stability, better status. But in the harvest years, we are motivated by the deeper. We seek a deeper connection to the truth, a deeper peace with our past, and a deeper contribution to the future. This is the stage of the mentor and the sage. The world is desperately hungry for the perspective that only someone who has survived the previous phases can provide. Your value is no longer measured by your productivity, but by your presence. You become a person who doesn't just do things, but who changes the temperature of a room simply by walking into it. This is the ultimate form of power, the power of an integrated soul. You have nothing left to prove, which makes you the most dangerous and the most beautiful version of yourself. One of the most profound shifts in this phase is the transformation of fear. Throughout our lives, fear often acts as a shadow that follows us. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of not being enough. But in the harvest phase, fear begins to dissolve in the light of perspective. You realize that you have already survived the things you once thought would break you. You have walked through the fire and found that you were made of something that could not be burned. This realization brings a radical kind of courage. It allows you to speak your truth with a clarity that you didn't possess when you were still worried about what people thought of you. It allows you to love others without needing anything in return. This is the phase of unconditional existence. You are no longer performing for an audience. You are living for the sake of life itself. The motivation here is to see how much light you can reflect in the time you have left. We must also talk about the beauty of legacy. Often, when people hear the word legacy, they think of statues or names on buildings, but the true legacy of a life lived through its phases is far more intimate. Your legacy is the way you made people feel. It is the wisdom you dropped into a conversation that changed someone's trajectory 10 years later. It is the resilience you modeled for your children and grandchildren. It is the quiet integrity you maintained when it would have been easier to compromise. In this harvest phase, you are planting seeds in minds and hearts that you will never see bloom, and there is a sublime, selfless motivation in that. You are contributing to the long, slow evolution of the human spirit. You realize that you are a link in a chain that stretches back to the beginning of time and forward into the infinite. This sense of belonging to something much larger than yourself is the antidote to the loneliness that often haunts the modern world. As we reach the final stretches of this speech, I want you to look at your life not as a collection of random events, but as a deliberate sequence of initiations. If you are currently in a phase of darkness, know that you are being prepared for a new kind of light. If you are in a phase of abundance, know that you are being asked to store up the strength you will need for the next transition. The phases of life are not meant to be conquered, they are meant to be inhabited. Do not try to live your harvest years when you are in your planting years, and do not mourn your planting years when it is time to harvest. There is a season for everything under the sun, and each season is perfect in its own time. The struggle only comes when we resist the change, when we try to hold on to a version of ourselves that we have already outgrown. The greatest motivation I can offer you is the truth that your story is not over until the very last breath, and even then, the echoes of your life will continue to vibrate in the lives of others. You are a work of art that is constantly being refined. Every scar on your heart is a line of poetry. Every tear you have shed is a drop of rain that helped your wisdom grow. Every smile you have shared is a spark of light that pushed back the darkness for someone else. You are a miracle in motion, moving through the phases of a journey that is as old as the stars and as fresh as the morning dew. So, whatever phase you find yourself in today, whether you are just starting out with nothing but a dream, whether you are in the thick of the battle, or whether you are beginning to see the golden horizon, take heart. You are exactly where you need to be. The universe does not make mistakes with its timing. Your job is to stay awake, to stay curious, and to keep moving forward with a heart full of hope. The river is moving, the seasons are turning, and the masterpiece of your life is unfolding exactly as it should. Embrace the transitions, trust the process, and never forget that the most beautiful phase of your life is the one you are brave enough to live fully right now. You are the architect, the builder, and the resident of your own soul. Make it a place of beauty, make it a place of strength, and above all, make it a place of love. Your journey is significant, your phases are sacred, and your life is a gift that the world is waiting to receive.